In the vast, uncharted regions of space, where time bends and stars whisper secrets of old, a crew of intrepid explorers stumbles upon an artifact that defies comprehension. This relic, pulsating with an otherworldly energy, promises unimaginable power, but at what cost? As their minds expand beyond human limits, they realize too late that they are not alone in this cosmic theater. Something ancient and hungry is watching, waiting for them to unlock its true potential. Will they harness this godlike force or become pawns in a galactic game older than existence itself? Prepare to embark on a journey through the stars where every discovery comes with a price. Subscribe now to uncover the truth behind Cosmic Legacy, the artifact of infinite power dash. The cosmos stretched endlessly before them, a tapestry woven from light and shadow, where silence reigned supreme and the laws of physics bent like willow branches under unseen forces. The crew of the Elysium Dash, a state-of-the-art exploration vessel, had spent months traversing this void, charting territories untouched by humanity. They were scientists, engineers, and dreamers, united by a singular purpose: to uncover the mysteries hidden within the universe's darkest corners. Yet nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. It began with a faint signal, a pulse so subtle it was almost imperceptible against the cacophony of stellar noise. At first, the sensors dismissed it as interference, a glitch in the system. But when the pattern repeated, precise, deliberate, it became clear that this was no random anomaly. It was a beacon, calling out across eons, beckoning those brave enough to follow. The coordinates led them to a desolate moon orbiting a dying star, its surface scarred by millennia of cosmic bombardment. Here, buried beneath layers of rock and dust, they found it, the artifact. Its shape defied description, shifting subtly even as they watched, as though alive. A lattice of translucent material formed its core, shimmering with hues that seemed to dance between dimensions. Encased within this structure floated something indescribable, a swirling mass of energy, dense and volatile, radiating both warmth and menace. The air around it hummed with latent power, making the hairs on their arms stand on end. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. No one spoke as they gathered around it, their breaths fogging the visors of their helmets. Each member of the crew felt the same mix of awe and trepidation, though none dared voice it aloud. This was history unfolding before their eyes, a moment that would redefine everything they thought they knew about the universe and themselves. Little did they know, it was also the beginning of a journey that would test their very souls. The decision to bring the artifact aboard the Elysium was unanimous, though not without hesitation. Every instinct screamed caution, urging them to leave it undisturbed, to turn back and report their findings to Earth Command. But curiosity, that insatiable drive that had propelled humanity across oceans, continents, and eventually into the stars, proved too strong to resist. Carefully encased in a containment field designed to neutralize any potential threats, the artifact was transported to the ship's research bay, where the crew wasted no time in initiating preliminary scans. What followed was a cascade of revelations that left even the most seasoned among them struggling to comprehend. The artifact emitted frequencies unlike anything recorded in scientific databases, oscillating between electromagnetic waves and quantum fluctuations that defied conventional understanding. Its composition suggested materials unknown to human science, elements forged in conditions so extreme they bordered on theoretical impossibility. And then there were the symbols etched into its surface, glyphs that pulsed faintly, rearranging themselves in patterns that seemed to respond to observation. As days turned into weeks, the crew grew increasingly obsessed. Sleep schedules collapsed under the weight of endless experimentation and analysis. Meals were consumed absent-mindedly, often cold and forgotten. Personal conflicts simmered just below the surface, exacerbated by exhaustion and the mounting pressure to make sense of their discovery. Yet despite these tensions, a shared sense of wonder held them together, driving them forward like moths drawn to a flame. Then came the breakthrough, or perhaps the curse. During a routine diagnostic, one of the researchers inadvertently triggered a resonance within the artifact. For a fleeting moment, the room filled with light, blinding and intense, accompanied by a sound that vibrated deep within their bones. When the phenomenon subsided, leaving behind only echoes and static, something had changed. Subtle at first, the effects manifested gradually, manifesting as heightened awareness, accelerated reflexes, and an uncanny ability to anticipate outcomes. It was as if the artifact had awakened dormant parts of their minds, granting them access to faculties previously unimaginable. But with these newfound abilities came unsettling side effects. Nightmares plagued their sleep, vivid and visceral, filled with visions of incomprehensible landscapes and shadowy figures whose presence chilled them to the core. Physical symptoms emerged as well: headaches, nosebleeds, and an inexplicable fatigue that lingered even after hours of rest. Despite these warning signs, the allure of the artifact's gifts proved irresistible. They convinced themselves that the benefits outweighed the risks, dismissing their discomfort as temporary adjustments to their enhanced states. Unbeknownst to them, however, the artifact was far more than a mere relic of some long-lost civilization. It was a key, a conduit connecting realms beyond human comprehension. And in unlocking its secrets, they had unknowingly opened a door, one that could never be closed. The changes wrought by the artifact were both exhilarating and disorienting, transforming the crew in ways they struggled to fully grasp. Tasks once considered arduous became trivial. Calculations that would have taken hours were completed in moments. Their senses sharpened, allowing them to perceive details invisible to ordinary eyes. The faintest tremor in the ship's hull, the subtle shift in another person's posture, the whispered hum of machinery operating at peak efficiency. These enhancements fueled a newfound confidence, a belief that they were evolving into something greater than mere mortals. Yet beneath this veneer of empowerment lurked shadows darker than any they had encountered in the depths of space. The nightmares persisted, growing more vivid and intrusive with each passing night. Scenes of destruction unfolded before their closed eyelids. Entire planets reduced to ash, civilizations erased in an instant, skies ablaze with fire. Figures loomed at the edges of these visions, their forms indistinct but their intentions unmistakably malevolent. When they awoke, drenched in sweat and gasping for air, the images lingered, haunting their thoughts long after consciousness returned. Compounding their unease were the physical manifestations of their transformation. Skin tingled with phantom sensations, as though tiny currents of electricity coursed just beneath the surface. Eyes burned with an intensity that made looking directly at bright lights unbearable. Voices carried undertones they couldn't quite place, whispers layered beneath spoken words that hinted at meanings beyond comprehension. These symptoms fluctuated unpredictably, sometimes fading entirely only to resurface with renewed ferocity. Despite these challenges, the crew pressed on, driven by a mixture of ambition and denial. They rationalized their experiences as natural consequences of interfacing with technology far advanced beyond human design. Surely, they reasoned, such profound alterations required time to stabilize, much like how muscles ached after rigorous exercise. To abandon their efforts now would mean surrendering not only to fear, but also to ignorance, a fate worse than death for explorers who had dedicated their lives to pushing boundaries. And so they continued their experiments, delving deeper into the artifact's mysteries while attempting to mitigate its adverse effects. Medical protocols were adjusted, dietary supplements introduced, meditation practices implemented, all in hopes of finding balance amidst chaos. Progress was incremental at best, marked by small victories overshadowed by larger setbacks. Still, they clung to hope, refusing to acknowledge the possibility that their actions might be irrevocably altering not just their bodies, but their very essence. Little did they realize that the artifact's influence extended far beyond individual perception. Unseen forces stirred in response to their tampering, ancient mechanisms awakening from slumber to assess the intrusion. Somewhere, in a realm beyond time and space, entities of unimaginable power took notice, their interest piqued by the audacity of these fragile beings daring to wield tools meant for gods. The artifact's influence began to seep into the fabric of their daily lives, subtly reshaping not only their individual perceptions but also the dynamics within the crew. Trust, once a cornerstone of their mission, started to erode as paranoia took root. The heightened awareness gifted by the artifact made them acutely attuned to each other's actions. Every glance, every gesture seemed laden with hidden meaning. Conversations became strained, laced with unspoken suspicions and veiled accusations. It was as though the relic had amplified not just their abilities but also their fears, dredging up insecurities they hadn't realized they harbored. One by one, they began to withdraw into themselves, retreating behind walls of isolation. Meals were eaten alone in quarters rather than shared around the communal table. Even during mandatory briefings, silence often stretched uncomfortably, broken only by terse updates or technical jargon devoid of emotion. Yet despite this growing divide, an undeniable connection lingered among them, a bond forged not through camaraderie but through the shared weight of what they had unleashed. Each member of the crew carried the burden of knowing that their decisions had irrevocably altered their fates, binding them together in a web of guilt and responsibility. As tensions mounted, so too did the artifact's hold over their minds. Its presence loomed large in every corner of the ship, a constant reminder of the power it wielded and the cost of wielding it. The glyphs etched into its surface now pulsed more frequently, their patterns shifting in ways that defied logic. Some swore they could hear whispers emanating from the relic, faint voices speaking in tongues long forgotten. Others claimed to see fleeting images reflected in its crystalline core, visions of alien worlds bathed in perpetual twilight, cities constructed from materials that shimmered like liquid starlight, and beings whose forms blurred between dimensions. These hallucinations grew harder to dismiss as mere figments of overworked imaginations. They felt real, tangible, as if the artifact was reaching out to them across the void of time and space. And perhaps it was. For all their advancements, humanity remained woefully unequipped to comprehend the true nature of such an object. To call it a tool or a weapon would be reductive. It was something far greater, a fragment of a civilization whose understanding of existence transcended mortal limitations. Yet even as the crew grappled with these revelations, they couldn't deny the seductive allure of the artifact's gifts. With each passing day, their enhanced abilities grew more pronounced, granting them insights and skills that bordered on the supernatural. Problems that once seemed insurmountable dissolved under the weight of their newfound intellect. Repairs to the ship, which might have taken hours, were completed in minutes. Complex navigational calculations became second nature, allowing them to chart courses through hyperspace with unprecedented precision. In moments of clarity, they marveled at what they had achieved, convinced that they were on the cusp of unlocking secrets that could elevate humanity to new heights. But for every triumph, there was a shadow, an equal and opposite reaction to their hubris. The physical toll worsened, manifesting in symptoms that no amount of medical intervention could alleviate. Muscles twitched involuntarily, eyes burned with an intensity that made focusing difficult, and migraines struck without warning, leaving them incapacitated for hours. Worse still were the psychological effects. Memories began to blur, fragmented recollections merging with the visions induced by the artifact until reality itself felt uncertain. Time lost meaning, stretching and contracting unpredictably. Hours felt like days, and moments of lucidity were punctuated by stretches of disorientation. Still, they pressed on, driven by a mixture of duty and desperation. To abandon their research now would mean admitting defeat, not just to themselves, but to whatever forces lay dormant within the artifact. And so they continued their experiments, probing deeper into its mysteries while clinging to the hope that they could master its power before it consumed them entirely. It was during one of these late-night sessions that the first sign of external interference appeared. The crew had grown accustomed to the artifact's erratic behavior, dismissing its fluctuations as part of its enigmatic nature. But this was different. A sudden surge of energy rippled through the containment field, destabilizing the delicate balance they had worked so hard to maintain. Alarms blared throughout the ship, red lights flashing as systems struggled to compensate for the unexpected spike. The crew scrambled to contain the situation, their movements precise yet frantic. Years of training kicked in, overriding their exhaustion and fear as they worked in tandem to stabilize the artifact. It was only after the crisis had been averted, barely, that they noticed something unusual. Data logs from the incident showed anomalies that defied explanation. Readings indicated a brief but intense burst of activity originating not from the artifact itself, but from somewhere outside the ship. At first, they dismissed it as cosmic interference, a side effect of their proximity to the dying star whose gravity distorted space-time. But further analysis revealed patterns embedded within the data, patterns eerily similar to the glyphs pulsing on the artifact's surface. The implications sent shivers down their spines. Whatever force had triggered the surge wasn't random. It was deliberate, a signal sent with purpose. Dread settled over the crew like a suffocating fog. They had always known the artifact was extraordinary, but the possibility that it might serve as a beacon, a calling card for something far older and more powerful than themselves, had never crossed their minds. Or perhaps it had, buried deep within their subconscious, where it festered alongside the nightmares and hallucinations. Now, confronted with evidence they couldn't ignore, they were forced to confront the unthinkable. They were not alone. The realization sparked a flurry of activity. Sensors were recalibrated, scanners deployed, and every available resource redirected toward identifying the source of the anomaly. Hours turned into days as they scoured the surrounding region, searching for any trace of the entity responsible. At first, there was nothing, only the vast emptiness of space, indifferent and unyielding. Then, just as despair began to take hold, they found it. A vessel unlike anything they had ever encountered drifted silently at the edge of their detection range. Its shape defied conventional design principles, appearing both fluid and rigid, as though it existed in multiple states simultaneously. No visible engines propelled it, yet it moved with deliberate precision, closing the distance between them with alarming speed. As it drew nearer, details emerged, surface textures that shifted and shimmered, emitting faint hues reminiscent of the artifact's core. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. The crew watched in stunned silence as the ship came to a halt mere kilometers away, its presence radiating an aura of menace that made their skin crawl. Communication attempts yielded no response, nor did any scans reveal life forms aboard. Yet they felt, that they were being observed. The artifact pulsed in sync with their heartbeats, its energy resonating with an intensity that left them breathless. It was as if the two objects were communicating, exchanging information across frequencies beyond human comprehension. And then, without warning, the ship vanished. One moment it was there, looming large against the backdrop of stars, and the next it was gone, leaving behind only questions and an overwhelming sense of dread. The artifact fell silent once more, its pulsations fading into dormancy. But the damage had been done. Whatever connection had been established, however brief, had awakened something within the crew, a gnawing certainty that their encounter was far from over. In the aftermath of the mysterious ship's disappearance, the atmosphere aboard the Elysium shifted palpably. The artifact, previously regarded as a source of fascination and empowerment, now loomed as a harbinger of doom. Every interaction with it felt tainted, as though they were tampering with forces far beyond their control. Yet abandoning their research altogether was unthinkable. The artifact's potential to unlock untold knowledge, to reshape humanity's place in the cosmos, was too great to relinquish. Instead, they resolved to proceed with extreme caution, implementing safeguards designed to mitigate further risks. Containment protocols were tightened, with redundant systems installed to ensure the artifact remained isolated from the ship's primary operations. Access was restricted to essential personnel, and even then, only under strict supervision. Monitoring stations were set up throughout the vessel, equipped with sensors calibrated to detect even the slightest deviation in energy levels. These measures provided a semblance of security, though none truly believed they offered genuine protection. The artifact's nature defied containment. It was less a physical object than a nexus of interconnected phenomena, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Despite these precautions, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Shadows seemed darker, corners more oppressive, as if unseen eyes followed their every move. Sounds carried unnaturally, echoing through corridors in ways that defied acoustics. Equipment malfunctioned sporadically, glitches occurring in patterns that suggested intent rather than coincidence. Paranoia reached fever pitch, exacerbated by the lingering effects of the artifact's influence. Sleep became elusive, dreams plagued by recurring motifs of pursuit and entrapment. Awakening brought little relief, as the line between reality and illusion continued to blur. Amidst this mounting tension, fractures within the crew widened. Personal grievances, once suppressed in favor of collective goals, erupted into open conflict. Arguments flared over minor infractions, escalating into heated confrontations that left tempers frayed and alliances shattered. Leadership structures crumbled under the strain, with authority figures struggling to maintain order amidst chaos. Decisions, once made collaboratively, devolved into unilateral actions dictated by instinct rather than reason. Unity dissolved into factionalism, as individuals gravitated toward those who shared their perspectives or fears. Yet beneath the discord, a fragile thread of cohesion persisted. Shared adversity forged bonds stronger than discord could sever, tethering them to each other even as mistrust festered. Moments of vulnerability revealed glimpses of humanity, reminding them of their common purpose. Late-night conversations, whispered in hushed tones, served as cathartic outlets for pent-up anxieties. Confessions of doubt and fear fostered empathy, bridging divides temporarily mended by mutual understanding. These fleeting connections offered solace, however transient, providing respite from the relentless pressure bearing down upon them. Meanwhile, the artifact continued to exert its influence, its presence a constant reminder of the stakes at play. Glyphs pulsed erratically, their patterns increasingly complex and indecipherable. Whispers grew louder, overlapping voices weaving intricate tapestries of sound that defied linguistic analysis. Visions intensified, blurring the boundaries between perception and hallucination. Crew members reported seeing apparitions, shadowy figures moving just beyond sight, vanishing when approached. Others described sensations of touch, cold fingers brushing against skin or phantom hands gripping shoulders tightly enough to leave bruises. These experiences varied widely, tailored seemingly to exploit individual weaknesses. Some succumbed to despair, overwhelmed by the weight of their perceived inadequacies. Others embraced recklessness, throwing themselves into dangerous experiments in search of answers or escape. A few clung stubbornly to hope, channeling their energies into unraveling the artifact's mysteries, convinced that salvation lay hidden within its depths. Regardless of approach, all were united by a single truth. The artifact had changed them irreversibly, reshaping not only their bodies but their very identities. As days bled into weeks, the crew found themselves caught in a paradoxical dance of attraction and repulsion. Drawn inexorably toward the artifact's promise of transcendence, they recoiled from its insidious grasp, aware that yielding completely would mean losing themselves entirely. This internal struggle mirrored their external predicament, torn between curiosity and caution, ambition and survival. Each decision carried profound implications, forcing them to navigate treacherous waters where missteps could prove fatal, not just for themselves, but potentially for humanity as a whole. The artifact's influence began to manifest in ways that transcended their individual experiences, weaving itself into the very fabric of the Elysium Dash. Systems aboard the ship, once reliable and predictable, started behaving erratically, as though infected by the same chaotic energy emanating from the relic. Lights flickered without warning, casting eerie shadows that danced across walls like phantoms. Temperature controls fluctuated wildly, plunging sections of the vessel into icy cold before surging back to stifling heat. Even the artificial gravity seemed unstable, causing objects to hover momentarily or plummet with unnatural force. These mechanical anomalies were accompanied by subtler, more insidious changes. The air within the ship grew heavier, thick with an oppressive weight that made breathing feel labored. Sounds carried differently, distorted as if passing through layers of water. Conversations became disjointed, words overlapping in strange echoes that lingered long after they had been spoken. It was as though the artifact was reshaping reality itself, bending the environment to its will and forcing the crew to adapt or succumb. Despite these challenges, the crew refused to abandon their mission. Each member clung to a desperate hope that understanding the artifact would grant them mastery over its power, allowing them to reclaim control of their fate. Research intensified, with teams working around the clock to decode its glyphs and analyze its energy signatures. Progress was slow and fraught with setbacks, but small victories provided fleeting moments of optimism. Patterns emerged within the glyph sequences, suggesting a form of language far removed from anything terrestrial, yet tantalizingly close to comprehension. Yet for every breakthrough, there was a price. The physical toll on the crew worsened, symptoms escalating from mild discomfort to debilitating agony. Skin took on a translucent quality, veins glowing faintly beneath the surface as though infused with the artifact's light. Eyes became hypersensitive, reacting violently to even the dimmest illumination. Voices carried undertones of static, layered with whispers that no one else could hear. Sleep remained elusive, dreams blending seamlessly with waking life until the distinction vanished entirely. Psychological deterioration followed suit, amplifying existing tensions and creating new fractures within the group. Trust eroded further, replaced by suspicion and paranoia. Every action was scrutinized, every decision questioned. Accusations flew freely, fueled by irrational fears and half-formed theories about who among them might be compromised by the artifact's influence. Some believed certain crew members had become conduits for its power, unknowingly serving as vessels for whatever ancient intelligence lay dormant within. Others speculated that betrayal lurked in their midst, driven by ambition or desperation. Amidst this chaos, leadership faltered. Those tasked with guiding the mission found themselves paralyzed by indecision, unable to reconcile conflicting priorities. Should they prioritize containment, focusing all resources on isolating the artifact and mitigating its effects? Or should they push forward, risking everything in pursuit of knowledge that might unlock humanity's next evolutionary leap? The debate raged endlessly, dividing the crew into factions locked in ideological warfare. One faction, led by the ship's chief scientist, advocated for cautious exploration. They argued that patience and methodical analysis were key to unlocking the artifact's secrets safely. To rush blindly into experimentation would invite disaster, potentially unleashing forces they couldn't contain. Their approach emphasized meticulous documentation, cross-referencing data points, and building theoretical frameworks to guide future research. While pragmatic, their strategy bred frustration among those eager for immediate results. In contrast, the opposing faction embraced boldness, viewing hesitation as a luxury they couldn't afford. Spearheaded by the ship's engineer, this group pushed for aggressive testing, believing that only through direct interaction could they hope to harness the artifact's full potential. They dismissed warnings of danger as fearmongering, convinced that humanity's survival depended on mastering technologies far beyond their current capabilities. Their methods were reckless, bordering on reckless abandon, yet yielded surprising insights that occasionally validated their approach. Caught between these extremes, the remaining crew struggled to find balance. Moderates attempted to mediate, proposing hybrid strategies that combined elements of both philosophies. But compromise proved elusive, with each side entrenched in their convictions. Tensions escalated, culminating in heated confrontations that left bruises both literal and metaphorical. Fists clenched, voices rose, and tempers flared, threatening to tear the already fragile unity apart. Through it all, the artifact pulsed steadily, indifferent to their struggles. Its presence loomed larger than ever, a silent observer watching as humanity grappled with its own hubris. The lift shifted faster now, patterns swirling chaotically before resolving into fleeting images that hinted at truths just out of reach. Whispers grew louder, overlapping voices forming a cacophony of sound that resonated deep within their minds. Visions became vivid, immersing them in alien landscapes where time flowed backward in gravity-reverse direction. And still, they persisted. Driven by a mixture of duty, curiosity, and sheer stubbornness, the crew refused to surrender. For better or worse, they had embarked on a journey with no clear destination, propelled by forces beyond their control. Each step forward brought them closer to answers, but also deeper into peril. As the days stretched into weeks, the crew's descent into madness accelerated, mirroring the artifact's increasing instability. The once pristine corridors of the Elysium now bore the scars of their unraveling sanity, walls scrawled with cryptic symbols matching those etched into the artifact, floors littered with discarded tools and shattered equipment. Personal belongings disappeared, reappearing in unexpected places, sometimes altered beyond recognition. Food supplies dwindled not due to consumption but because items vanished entirely, leaving behind empty shelves and unanswered questions. The psychological toll manifested differently for each crew member, tailored almost cruelly to exploit their deepest vulnerabilities. One researcher, plagued by recurring nightmares of suffocation, developed an irrational fear of enclosed spaces. Tasks requiring entry into confined areas, maintenance shafts, storage compartments, became insurmountable obstacles, triggering panic attacks that left him gasping for air. Another crew member, haunted by visions of abandonment, withdrew completely, refusing to leave her quarters despite repeated pleas from colleagues. Her voice echoed through communication channels, fragmented sentences repeating endlessly like a broken record. Physical symptoms worsened, mirroring the crew's mental deterioration. Skin lesions appeared overnight, raw patches glowing faintly with the same luminescence radiating from the artifact. Hair fell out in clumps, replaced by thin strands that shimmered unnaturally under light. Eyes clouded over, pupils dilating uncontrollably until vision blurred into a haze of colors and shapes. Some reported hearing music, a haunting melody that resonated within their skulls, impossible to ignore, yet equally impossible to locate. Yet amidst this growing chaos, moments of clarity emerged unexpectedly, offering glimpses of insight that defied explanation. During one such episode, a junior technician experienced a sudden surge of lucidity while examining the artifact's core. Time slowed to a crawl as she observed the swirling mass of energy within, discerning patterns previously obscured by its chaotic motion. Symbols materialized before her eyes, arranging themselves into coherent sequences that conveyed meaning beyond language. When she snapped back to reality, trembling and disoriented, she recounted her experience to skeptical listeners, sketching diagrams that baffled even the most seasoned scientists. These flashes of enlightenment were rare and unpredictable, occurring without warning and fading just as quickly. Yet they provided tantalizing hints that the artifact held secrets worth uncovering, if only they could endure the cost. Inspired by these revelations, some crew members redoubled their efforts, throwing caution to the wind in pursuit of understanding. Experiments grew bolder, boundaries pushed further, as they sought to replicate the conditions that triggered such epiphanies. Others viewed these occurrences with trepidation, fearing they represented not progress but regression, a sign that their minds were breaking under the strain. Meanwhile, the artifact continued to evolve, its behavior growing increasingly erratic. Containment fields fluctuated wildly, requiring constant recalibration to prevent catastrophic breaches. Energy readings spiked unpredictably, forcing emergency protocols into action multiple times daily. Sensors malfunctioned, providing inconsistent data that complicated analysis efforts. Despite these challenges, the crew pressed on, driven by a mix of desperation and determination. Tensions reached a boiling point during a particularly volatile incident. A sudden surge in energy destabilized the containment field, causing the artifact to emit a blinding flash of light accompanied by a deafening roar. Crew members collapsed, overwhelmed by sensory overload, as visions flooded their minds. Images of destruction so vivid they felt tangible. Entire planets crumbled into dust, civilizations reduced to ash, stars extinguished in an instant. When consciousness returned, confusion reigned supreme, memories fragmented and unreliable. In the aftermath, accusations flew freely, blame shifting rapidly as each crew member sought anyone, to hold accountable. Leadership structures crumbled entirely, devolving into anarchy as individuals acted independently, pursuing agendas born of fear and mistrust. Unity dissolved completely, replaced by chaos and uncertainty. Still, amidst the turmoil, a kernel of resolve remained. Humanity's innate drive to explore, to understand, burned brightly despite overwhelming odds. And so they persevered, clinging to hope even as despair threatened to consume them. The artifact's erratic behavior reached a tipping point, forcing the crew to confront the possibility that their control over it was an illusion. Containment fields failed repeatedly, requiring emergency overrides that drained precious resources. Energy surges became more frequent, each one leaving the ship's systems destabilized and the crew shaken. Glyphs on the artifact's surface now pulsed in sync with their heartbeats, creating an unsettling rhythm that reverberated through the hull. The whispers grew louder, overlapping voices forming a deafening chorus that made concentration nearly impossible. Amidst the chaos, fractures within the crew deepened. Trust evaporated entirely, replaced by paranoia and suspicion. Every action was scrutinized, every decision second-guessed. Some believed certain members had become unwitting conduits for the artifact's power, their actions guided by forces beyond their awareness. Others accused colleagues of sabotage, convinced that betrayal lurked behind every corner. Arguments erupted frequently, escalating into physical altercations that left bruises and broken equipment in their wake. Yet even as unity crumbled, individual resilience emerged. Each crew member found ways to adapt, drawing strength from fragments of clarity amidst the madness. One scientist began documenting every anomaly, compiling data into sprawling charts that hinted at patterns beneath the chaos. Another focused on maintaining the ship's critical systems, working tirelessly to keep the Elysium operational despite the artifact's interference. These small acts of defiance offered fleeting hope, reminders that humanity's spirit could endure even the most daunting challenges. A breakthrough came unexpectedly during a routine scan of the artifact's energy emissions. Buried within the chaotic readings was a signal, a faint but deliberate pattern that repeated cyclically. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, yet eerily familiar, as though it resonated with something deep within their consciousness. Further analysis revealed that the signal corresponded to specific glyph sequences, suggesting a form of communication rather than random noise. Excitement rippled through the crew, tempered by caution. Could this be the key to understanding the artifact's purpose? Or was it another trap, luring them deeper into its web? Debate raged, factions clashing over how to proceed. Some argued for immediate interaction, believing the signal represented an opportunity too significant to ignore. Others urged restraint, warning that engaging with the artifact further could unleash consequences they weren't prepared to face. Ultimately, curiosity won out. Using modified communication arrays, the crew attempted to respond, mimicking the signal's structure and frequency. For hours, there was no reply. Just as doubts began to creep in, the artifact reacted. Its core flared brightly, glyphs rearranging into new configurations while the whispers intensified. Then, silence. The artifact fell dormant once more, leaving the crew to wonder if they had succeeded or provoked something far worse. The artifact's response triggered a cascade of changes aboard the Elysium Dash. Systems stabilized temporarily, energy fluctuations subsiding as though acknowledging the crew's attempt at dialogue. But this reprieve was short-lived. Within hours, new anomalies emerged, subtle distortions in the ship's spatial orientation, as if reality itself was bending around them. Objects shifted position without explanation, appearing in places they hadn't been moments before. Time seemed to stretch and compress unpredictably, minutes passing like hours or vice versa. These phenomena coincided with heightened sensory experiences among the crew. Colors appeared more vibrant, sounds richer and layered, textures impossibly detailed. Yet these enhancements came at a cost. Headaches worsened, vision blurred intermittently, and voices whispered incessantly, urging them toward actions they couldn't fully comprehend. Some crew members reported seeing figures moving just beyond their line of sight, shadowy forms that vanished when approached. Others claimed to hear their own names spoken softly, originating from nowhere and everywhere at once. Despite these unsettling developments, the crew pressed forward, driven by the tantalizing possibility that they were unlocking the artifact's secrets. They redoubled their efforts, analyzing the signal's structure and testing hypotheses about its origin. Progress remained slow, but each discovery fueled their determination, keeping despair at bay for now. As days passed, the crew noticed a disturbing trend. The artifact's influence extended beyond the ship, altering their perception of the surrounding cosmos. Stars appeared dimmer, their light distorted as though viewed through warped glass. Nebulae shifted colors unnaturally, hues cycling rapidly between extremes. Even the void of space seemed less empty, filled with faint traces of movement that defied explanation. It was as though the artifact was reshaping not only their environment, but their very understanding of existence. These changes affected each crew member differently. Some embraced the altered reality, finding beauty in its strangeness and meaning in its chaos. Others resisted, clinging desperately to what remained of their former lives. Tensions escalated, arguments erupting over interpretations of events and strategies for survival. Leadership faltered entirely, decisions made impulsively rather than collaboratively. Yet amidst the discord, moments of connection persisted, shared glances of recognition, quiet acknowledgments of mutual struggle. The artifact continued to pulse steadily, indifferent to their plight. Its presence loomed larger than ever, a silent observer watching as humanity teetered on the brink of transformation or annihilation. Whispers grew louder, visions more vivid, until distinguishing dream from reality became nearly impossible. Still, the crew refused to give up, driven by a mixture of hope and desperation that bordered on obsession. A second encounter with the mysterious ship shattered what little stability remained. Appearing suddenly near the Elysium Dash, it emitted a low-frequency hum that resonated through the hull, causing equipment to malfunction and crew members to collapse. Glyphs on the artifact flared brightly, responding to the ship's proximity as though communicating silently across vast distances. When the hum ceased, the ship vanished, leaving behind only echoes and unanswered questions. This event marked a turning point. The crew realized they were pawns in a game far larger than themselves, manipulated by forces they couldn't begin to comprehend. Some advocated abandoning the artifact entirely, severing ties with whatever ancient intelligence lay dormant within. Others insisted on continuing, convinced that mastery over the relic was their only chance for survival. Debates grew heated, culminating in a dramatic confrontation that left the ship divided. In the end, neither side prevailed. Exhaustion and fear overwhelmed logic, leading to indecision and paralysis. Meanwhile, the artifact pulsed steadily, its whispers growing insistent, urging them toward a choice they weren't ready to make. With time running out, the crew made a desperate gamble, activating the artifact fully, hoping to unlock its secrets or destroy it once and for all. Containment fields were disabled, energy barriers lowered, allowing the relic's power to surge unchecked. Light flooded the ship, blinding and intense, accompanied by a sound that vibrated deep within their bones. Reality bent and twisted, collapsing into a kaleidoscope of images and sensations. When the storm subsided, the artifact lay silent, its core dark and inert. The crew stood frozen, unsure whether they had succeeded or doomed themselves entirely. Systems aboard the Elysium rebooted slowly, flickering back to life as though awakening from a long slumber. Outside the windows, stars shone brighter, their light steady and unwavering. But something had changed. The crew felt it, an indescribable shift within themselves, as though part of the artifact's essence lingered, embedded in their very being. They had crossed a threshold, emerging transformed yet uncertain of who or what they had become. As the Elysium drifted through the void, the crew reflected on their journey. The artifact's legacy was undeniable. It had reshaped their perceptions, pushed them to the limits of endurance, and forced them to confront truths about themselves and the universe. Yet its ultimate purpose remained elusive, a mystery destined to haunt them forever. Though battered and broken, they resolved to continue their mission, carrying the artifact's lessons with them. Humanity's future depended on their ability to adapt, to learn from both triumphs and failures. As they charted a course toward Earth, they knew one thing for certain. The cosmos held wonders and dangers beyond imagination, and they were ready to face them head-on. Subscribe now to uncover more thrilling tales of cosmic exploration and human resilience.